Hi, everybody, and welcome to ByProduct Live, where we unbox everything SaaS and product. We talk with experts and leaders in SaaS to understand real-world challenges product businesses face and the approach that these leaders are taking. This week, we're covering a really important topic that actually does sometimes get overlooked while product and engineering are taking all the glory, and that's the importance of the commercial side of a SaaS business and its alignment with product and engineering. I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Cosway. Matt's a consultant COO and vice president. He's spent the last 15 years working in VC and PE-backed businesses, including the hypergrowth startup Financial Force, who are now called Satinia. He's worked at WeWork and more recently smaller SaaS businesses looking for exec leadership guidance and advice. In his spare time, Matt's also an extremely accomplished DJ and music producer away from his day job. Hello, Matt. How are you today?
Oh, absolutely splendid, mate. Thanks for having me on.
No problem.
A great pleasure. A subject very close to my heart, as we know.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get straight into things. So, in your opinion, why is it important to ensure alignment between sales, operation, and exec leadership alongside product and engineering?
When I go into organizations and sort of discuss kind of the challenges that SaaS businesses are either facing as they are sort of startups wanting to scale up, or whether they're legacy software businesses wanting to become more SaaSified, one of the challenges that I've seen across all of the companies that I've worked in is that wider alignment across all of the functions. So I've really specialized in now in the last sort of couple of years of actually making sure that everybody's on the same page, everybody's aligned, everybody's knowing what the North Star is. Really, that's one of the sort of terms that I use quite regularly with all of the functions, is understanding that your function, yes, has a very important part to play, but in a much wider picture, and making it bite-sized and easy to digest, really.
Yeah. Cool. And you mentioned about a North Star. So, do you want to give a quick overview of what a North Star is and why it's important?
Yeah, it kind of was introduced to me when I was at Financial Force by Jeremy Roche, and it was a technique which I think he'd picked up through sort of Unit 4 and sort of the larger organizations that he'd sort of been part of. And what it really helped us do was create a set of goals and the sort of subsequent trajectory, excuse me, which then it helped tell the picture and the sort of strategy and make it real for people. So having a clear North Star of, particularly within a startup, is kind of ARR growth, and breaking it down into each sort of function's responsibility to make sure that it can be digested, it can be measured, it can be tracked against, but also it can move slightly as well. It's not just necessarily a fixed goal, and it gives you something to track back to all the time. So, kind of, is this thing that we're doing the right thing? Is it going to help us get any closer to it? We also used to use, again, within the sort of Financial Force days, the V2 MOMS, which was a Salesforce technique, which is kind of your visions, values, methods, obstacles, and measurements. So they kind of work really, really sort of hand in hand. And again, that can drop right down through every level of the business. And if everybody is using the V2 MOMS and a North Star, you find that your business alignment it's relatively frictionless, because everybody's sort of facing in the right direction. And one of the things that I see when I go and do sort of consulting work through the PEs and the VCs that I work with, is sometimes you see businesses that are quite fragmented. You'll get kind of product doing one thing, you'll get marketing doing another thing, and not quite aligned or talking to each other, and all having their own kind of individual goals and aspirations within that function. But actually that might not align to ultimately the business's, top line strategy, which could be ARR growth. It could be getting to an IPO. It could be getting to, to be acquired by somebody. So I will go in more often than not and kind of start looking across all the functions. And my experience is quite broad. Traditionally I'm from a HR background, but actually, I kind of worked when I left the HR gig, I went into consulting. I went and did the actual software implementations. I've worked across lots of functions, and then worked my way up through them, which kind of gives me a really broad understanding of how software businesses operate. And a lot of the modeling that I go and do with businesses is to go, what is your lead to cash process? What is your business operating model? What is your actual, then your grand vision, so understanding, and then understanding what maybe the PE company wants, or what the VCs want, or what the founders want, and kind of getting everything out of people to then go, right, this is how we align to that ultimate aspiration.
Yeah.
And then working with then the teams and the executives in those functions to say, right, you are currently here, we need to be here, or we need to change this, or this is a pivot that we need to make, or whatever it's going to be. Let's work out with you what that plan's going to be, and ultimately present back to an organization the kind of strategy, the whole kind of business strategy for what could be a 3-year plan. It could be a fix-it plan. That's kind of what I'm pretty good at, is kind of being able to sort through that and fix stuff.
Yeah, cool. And you touched on this a little bit, but what would be some examples of North Stars that you've seen implemented that have been successful?
Targets for 10 is one of my favorites. So when you get kind of smaller SaaS businesses that have kind of maybe got to the first million, it's in how do you get into that 10 million mark, which is always a really, really good milestone. So I like kind of little snappy sort of project titles and kind of project names for things. So kind of like I create usually, a target for 10. So how do we get ARR growth from where it is today to 10 million? So that could be then where you start to work with different functions to say, right, okay, you're building a great product, but actually, are people buying it? Is it easy to sell? People, is it usable? Do people want to actually, become a customer for life? And then working with the product organization to make sure that you've got the kind of the market requirement stuff really well outlined, to then work with marketing to say, right, okay, well, how are we going to market? What's the go-to-market strategy? What's going to be the ultimate hook that's going to get people in to look at, in your shop window? And then is that going to deliver enough leads? So I can work down, to a really granular level where your lead flow is going to come from based on your market size, so your total addressable market. Work out, kind of what leads are going to be coming through, then work with sales to say, well, this is the capacity, of leads that you're going to need to work your way through, and this is how many deals you're going to get to. And then that goes into delivery, and then into support, and into customer success. So when you start to actually outline almost like the kind of production line, the factory of a SaaS business, you can become really quite prescriptive with, let's tweak this knob. One of the software businesses that I worked with was a fleet automotive product, and I got to be really, really accurate with predicting what levers to pull and when, at what time of year, based on when, the majority of new cars were released. So you could say, well, there's going to be a trigger in the market, which then means that there's going to be an influx of something happening. So therefore, we need to ramp up, headcount in this area, or we need to ramp up production in the software teams, in the engineering teams. So having that bit of clarity of, let's get to ultimate ARR growth of X amount, and then you can work out kind of how you then scale things. And this is something that I learned with WeWork really well, was actually how you grow, so rapidly. When I was at WeWork, I think I onboarded about 3,000 people in 6 months into the European team. And once you've got that massive influx of people, it's like, well, what do you do with them? Where do they go? How do you, how do you actually get everybody motoring? And unless you've got a plan to really explain to somebody on day one, this is what your job is, this is what I need you to do, and this is the impact it's going to have. It gives that people that individual alignment to go, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I think that is, one of the biggest learnings that I've had over the last sort of 10 years has been that alignment, getting everybody facing in the right direction. It helps guide everything that you do, from your product, from your marketing, to your hiring plans, to how you onboard people, how you potentially offboard people, your growth plans within the teams, doing people's personal growth, how you work out your succession planning. If you've got everybody kind of firing off in different directions, you end up with a bit of a hot mess, and then people struggle to
Yeah.
say, what's good. And then when you want to go and get other investments, you can't articulate really well what the plan is.
Yeah.
And that's some of the things I'll help companies do is, when they've taken the first round of investment and they get a big pile of cash, and they go, what do I do with it? And I go, well, let's do this,
Yeah.
this, and this, and then
Hire
this will
people,
be
just keep
hire
hiring.
which is often the case. Is sometimes
Yeah.
let's spin up huge amounts of resource into these areas and thinking that adding loads of people is going to solve it. But if you hire loads of people and don't know what to do and they're not aligned to something, but also this was the working with Jeremy from Financial Force, he really emboldened the culture of failing fast and failing cheap. So it was a really good way of kind of making mistakes in a controlled environment, and you were never felt like you'd be told off. It was like everybody makes mistakes. Everybody's if you're not, he used to say, if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying things.
Yeah.
Which is quite a liberating experience for somebody who, I'd come from a relatively restrictive background of this is your job, this is what you do, this is how you do it, you don't make mistakes. And to come to something that was very, very liberated, very free as an environment, it was brilliant. And I was given the freedom to do lots of really exciting things, and build my career around essentially making mistakes and rectifying them and learning from them, and then being able to put that into more plans. And that's one thing that one of my biggest bits of advice to companies when I go and speak with them is it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to do these things. What's not okay is to not try things and then complain about it. Let's make the mistakes. Let's figure out what works. Let's figure out what doesn't work. Figure out what you do like and what you don't like. And as long as we're not wasting oodles and oodles of cash, you never know. That little bit of serendipity might come along and, be the next big thing. You just don't know.
Yeah, of course. But of course, you need the framework and the environment to be able to operate in, right?
You do. And that's where I work really well across kind of process mapping. That came from when I worked in the sort of software implementation, the consulting gig, actually learning how to do kind of like UML diagrams for software, kind of process flows. And what I was kind of really lucky to have experienced is some really, really big projects in some really big companies where I was able to kind of harvest all these different ways of working and then put it into kind of like a toolkit to say, right, okay, I can come and help you and I can do these things. This is how I do it. This is the results that I've seen before. Let's try these things. And this is my framework. Like I said, I use North Stars. I use V2 Mons. I love a guy in the US called Gordy Curfey who does a thing called the Rocket Model, which is a way of sort of building high performing teams. Because ultimately, everything within a SaaS business is around its people, whether it's your individual people or whether it's your customers. Your software that you make has the ability to make or break somebody's day. Yeah, everybody uses software in their sort of business lives every single day, and if you know it yourself, if a piece of software is great, you kind of don't think about it, but it kind of helps you be great. And Jeremy and I we say this a lot of times, is how do we make our customers the rock stars of their business through our software? And that's also a really good way of kind of putting, people say putting the customer at the heart of everything that you do, but actually it is real people. And if you make something that's of poor quality, then they're not going to use it. The customer retreats, they don't like it, and then you don't get the satisfaction of making a great product.
Yeah. And I guess as we kind of move to just wrap things up on this conversation today, I guess that's why it's important then to have this North Star alignment, because if everybody is aligned around the same goal, ultimately the customer feels that. Whereas if product and engineering 100%. Are doing their thing, sales are out selling something different, marketing aren't pushing the messages out in the right way, then ultimately that leads to a customer that's not going to be happy with what you're delivering to them.
Absolutely, and when people purchase software, there's a little bit of the sort of psychological leap that they've got to make and trust that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, but also got to believe in that product, and then they can stake their careers on it as well. I've seen people who make bad software decisions when it comes to their purchasing of new tech, and they'll be judged on that product. So one of the conversations that I have with all businesses when I do things like fireside chats is to say, look, what we do has a real world impact on people, whether it's the fleet management software company that I work with, their software made sure that their drivers, people's fleet drivers got home safely, because if a car wasn't checked or wasn't managed correctly, sometimes bad things happen. So making things real for people, it's not just a kind of an ethereal bit of software that isn't going to have an impact. There's a real personal thing and a real kind of psychological connection that people make with software.
Cool. I think that's a really good point to draw things to a conclusion that while software might not feel real, it does have real impact on people.
Massive.
And it's really important that everybody in the business understands that.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time, Matt. We've really enjoyed today. I hope people get some learnings from this, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Cool. Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.